Your objective for lesson 3, because we're skipping lesson 2, is I will create scaled bar graphs. So we're still working with data, except we're just not collecting data today. The data that we're going to be looking at has already been collected for us. But instead of making a picture graph or a tally chart table, we are actually going to be making bar graphs. I know you've heard of bar graphs before. I know that you've probably seen bar graphs before. But today you're going to actually be creating some of your own. There are some templates in your binder, probably before your problem set, that you're going to be using during the concept development of this lesson. So you need to make sure that those are in your binder. We're going to be using graph A first, and it says tank A, tank B, tank C, tank D, and tank E down here at the bottom. There's 2 different ones that we're working with today, so please make sure that it is the one that says graph A. You don't have this part on your template or in your binder, so you will need to be looking at this chart that I'm circling around right now. This says that it's the number of fish in Sal's pet store. So somebody must have went around Sal's pet store, wherever that is, and figured out how many fish were in that store, and that's the data that they're collecting. So in tank A, there were 5, 10, 15 fish, because we can see right here that there's groups of 5. Tank B didn't have any fish because we don't see anything. Tank C had 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 fish. Tank D had 5, 10 fish, and tank E had 5, 10, 15, 20 fish. So we're going to repeat the process that you see right here. They've already done tank A for you, because as you can see, the squares are just like these squares right here. So each one of these squares would represent 5 different fish. So I would have 5 right here, 10 right here, and then 15 to show for tank A. We do not have to put anything for tank B because there weren't any fish. So we're going to have to go up 5 squares for tank C because there were 25 fish in that tank. So you need to draw a rectangle around those right here on your graph template. And then you're just going to be shading them in on your paper. And then we're going to go and do the same thing for tank C or tank D, E. I'm going to have to move mine over. I put it in the wrong spot. Tank D had 10 fish, so that's just going to be 2 squares, because each square, once again, is equal to 5. And then tank E had 20 fish, so I'm going to be needing to do 4 different squares, because I know that 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So make sure that on your template in your binder that your table is looking like this. These are bars, and that's why it's called a bar graph. Okay, so we're going to add some more to our bar graph. Whenever you make bar graphs, they have to have a title. They have to have something called a scale, and that's what we're going to be making right now. A scale on this bar graph would be right here on this side, and a scale is used so that way for someone that's looking at these bars, they end at a certain point, so they would need to know what number does this bar represent. We knew what number the bars represented because we had this chart. But if someone didn't have this chart to look at, they would need to know how much is this bar representing or how much is this bar representing. So this right here on this side is called a scale, and that is letting whoever's looking at this bar graph know what each bar represents. And as you can see, I've already started some of the scale, and since every fish tank had at least 5 fish, or the number of fish that were in the fish tank, you can count by 5s and say those, then the best type of scale that we're going to use for this graph would be to count by 5s. And as you can see, I'm not putting 0 right here in the middle. Well, I can't move the 0. But the 0 is not right in the middle right here. It's actually on the line. So you're going to start on your paper and you're going to write 0 right here on the next, or the bottom line. This next line right here, you're going to put 5. And then you're going to go on to the next line and put 10, and then 15, and 20, and 25, and 30, and 35. So Make sure you get your scale on your graph, just like mine is showing. So now we can see what each bar represents, because all we have to do is look at this bar and follow it over and you see 15. When you look at this bar and you follow it over, you see 30. So that shows me right there that that bar is actually incorrect. So I'm going to fix it on my screen. I'm going to make this bar go down if it will let me. Now I fixed this bar because tank B actually has 25 fish. Tank C is also wrong because tank, oh look, this whole thing is wrong. That's silly. Okay, there. Now I think we have it right. Or mine is right on my screen. Hopefully yours is right on your paper. Okay, so we created the scale, and I'm going to say that word a lot because I want you to remember that this is called a scale on a bar graph. And now we're going to be moving on to picking out a title for the bar graph. And then we actually have to label the bar graph. There's always a label that's going to be next to the scale. And there's always a label down here to tell what these actually represent. Each one of these bars on the graph actually represents something. So we're going to be moving on next to put a title and put some labels on our bar graph. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to label is the scale. So whenever you have to label a scale on a bar graph, you have to ask yourself, what do those numbers mean, or what do those numbers tell you? So if someone was looking at this bar for tank A, and they realized that this bar stopped at 15, then you're going to have to ask yourself, that's 15 what? And that's how we label the scale on our bar graph. So on your bar graph, you should notice that those numbers are telling us that that is the number of fish in that particular tank. So over here next to your numbers, I want you to label that the number of fish. So yours is going to look just like mine does. Right here it says number of fish. Okay, so now we have to also label the other side of the bar graph, which is underneath each tank. So what do those tank A, tank B, tank C, tank D, and tank E stand for? And this one's pretty easy because we know that they stand for the tanks that are in Al's fish tank, or I forget his name. So underneath A, B, C, D, and E, you just need to label those as the tanks. And then the last thing that we need to label for the graph is a title. So if you look back at the chart, which was the number of fish in Sal's pet store, then that is going to be our same label for our bar graph. So we're going to go back to our bar graph, and you need to label the title as the number of fish in Sal's pet store. Once you have all that labeled, you can push play and be ready to move on. Okay, now you need to take out the other graph template that's in your binder. It might be on the back side of this paper, or it might just be on another paper. This is going to be the same exact graph, except this time you see that it says tank A, tank B, tank C, tank D, and tank E on the left-hand side, and then you see that it says number of fish on the bottom, so that's actually where we're going to be putting our scale. So I'm going to undo what the scale looks like there. So once again, you're putting your number right there on the line. So if you need to push pause and get your scale written, you can do that now. Whenever you're ready to move on to actually putting in our bar graphs, you can push play. So we counted by fives and we labeled our scale like it says here on the page. And I want you to notice that this is going horizontally, because whenever you're thinking of horizontally, you're going from left to right, like the horizon over the ocean, or the horizon that goes from left to right, and vertically goes up and down. So now we have our tanks going up and down. So when we're putting our bar graph, we always start from the tank and then we go up from the bottom of the tank. So this time our bars aren't going to be going up and down like this. They're actually going to be starting over here where the tank is, and they're going to be going horizontally. So we're going to have to look back at our chart. You can look back at your other graph to see how much was in tank A and tank B and C and D and E, so that way we can fill in the chart, or not the chart, but the graph for this page. So when we look at tank A, we knew that there were 14, not 14, but 15. So for tank A, you need to go ahead and draw your bar for 15 and shade that in. We remember that in tank B, that one was messed up. There were 0 fish in tank B and 25 fish in tank C. So make sure you're getting your bar for tank C and that it's going all the way to the 25 line where your scale is. And then if you want to push pause and get tank D and tank E on your bar graph, then go ahead and do that. Okay, so your bar graph should look similar to mine. Once again, this is a horizontal bar graph. The other one that we did before was a vertical bar graph, and you can tell by the way that the bars are. If they're going up and down, once again, that's vertical. And if they're going from left to right or sideways, that's a horizontal bar graph. And you may see bar graphs both ways, so it's good to know how to make a bar graph both of these ways. So now we are going to look at both graphs. And as you can see here, I turned the first graph that we made, and I just turned it sideways. So when you're looking at both of these graphs, they both look the same, and I don't know why they keep putting this on here incorrectly, because on tank B, on both of these graphs, they still have that it had 30 fish, but when we saw on the chart, there was no fish. So these two graphs aren't correct whenever it comes to looking at tank B. So we'll just ignore that part of that. So your graph should look like this, except tank B is blank. So you can see that both these graphs look exactly the same, it's just the bars are going a different way. So now we're going to look, and it says Marcy buys 3 fish from tank C. Write a subtraction number sentence to show how many fish are left in tank C. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to remove this from tank B because I don't like that it shows that. So let's look at tank C, and it says for tank C, I see right here that she has 25 fish, or there are 25 fish in tank C, and she's buying 3 fish. So on this piece of paper where your graph is, write a subtraction sentence to show how many fish are left in tank C if Marcy bought 3 fish. Okay, so the subtraction sentence should say 25 minus 3 equals 22, so the amount of fish left in tank C are 22 fish. So we're going to have to fix our bar graph to where this bar for tank C shows 22. So I want you to fix your bar for tank C to where it would show 22. Okay, so your bar is going to look similar to this. We don't know exactly where 22 is, but we do know that it's going to be between 20 and 25, and it's probably going to be a little bit closer to 20 than it is 25. So you should have just erased some of your bar to where it shows that it's in between 20 and 25, and that would tell us that it's about 22 fish that are left in the tank. Okay, now we're going to move on to the problem set. So if you need to get that out and get that ready, do that now. Okay, so number 1, it says this table shows the number of students in each class. Use the table to color the bar graph. The first one has been done for you. So this part's easy because they've already done the scale for you. They've counted by twos. They've already put what the numbers stand for, and as we look up here in the chart, you can see that the numbers stand for the number of students, so that's why they put number of students. And the chart has different classes, so down here on the bar graph, they put class underneath baking, sports, chorus, and drama. And whenever you have a scale and it's counting by twos, it's a really easy scale because you know if you're in between 0 and 2, right in the middle, that would be 1. I know if I'm going between 2 and 4, directly in the middle would be 3. So these types of graphs are easier to read because you know what's directly in the middle of those two numbers. And all these numbers don't count by 2, but it didn't really go past 20 in all of these numbers, so we knew that counting by 2s would probably be a good thing to use. If I counted by 5s on this scale, some of these numbers may be hard to read. you always want to go with the lowest number on your scale if you can, depending on the numbers that you're going to graph. So the first one for baking has already been done for us, and you see that they drew this little dotted line to show that this is actually 9. You don't have to draw the dotted line on your bar graph whenever you do sports and chorus and drama. So I'm going to do one with you for sports, and we see that sports had 16 students that chose that, so our bar graph's just going to go up to 16, and then you just need to shade that in lightly. And then you need to do the rest for chorus and drama, and when you're ready to go on to the questions for this graph, you may push play. Okay, so your graph should look very similar to what mine looks like, where you graphed chorus and drama. Now we're going to go and we're going to answer questions based on this graph. Part A says, what is the value of each square in the bar graph? So we know that if I'm starting down here on this bar graph and then I'm going to here, that there was a total of 2 students. And you know that the scale is skip counting by 2, so that means that each square in the bar graph is equal to 2 students. Make sure you're not just putting the number 2, because we do need to know that it's just 2 students. It could be 2 dogs or 2 cats or 2 fish, so it is 2 students in this particular graph that we're talking about. Part B says write a number sentence to find how many total students are enrolled in classes. Enrolled means that they're like taking these particular classes. So we've got baking, sports, chorus, and drama. And the way to find out how many are taking them all together is just to add each class up. So we knew that baking was 9, sports was 16, chorus was 13, and then drama was 18. So on your paper, get those numbers added and then write down how many total students are enrolled in all classes and push play to check your answer. Okay, so we said that there's 56 students total that were enrolled in all of these classes. Okay, so part C says how many fewer students are in sports than in chorus and baking combined. So this is kind of a two-step problem because you're going to have to combine 2 of these numbers to be able to figure out how many fewer there are of those than sports. So we're going to have to write a number sentence to show our thinking. So we need to first look and combine chorus and baking. So that's going to be our first number sentence. So chorus was 13 and baking was 9. So you need to add 13 plus 9 to see how many students were in that combined. So do that now on your paper. Okay, so we know that 13 plus 9 is 22. So chorus and baking together had 22 students. And we need to know how many fewer students are in sports than there are in chorus and baking. So now we've got to take that number 22 and we've got to subtract sports from that. We know that sports was 16, so 22 minus 16 is what you're doing now. Okay, so whenever we take 22 and we subtract 16 from that, we are left with 6. So now we always write our answers in sentences. So they were wondering how many fewer students were in sports than chorus and baking. So there are 6 fewer students in sports than there are in chorus and baking combined. Okay, so make sure you have your number sentences and your sentence written so we can move on to the next part of the problem set. Okay, so this problem set you see on the scale, they're skip counting by 5s, but they did put the little marks in between each number on the scale just to show you exactly where the other numbers were between 0 and 5 and 5 and 10. So that's going to be good to be able to read some of these bars. This says that this bar graph shows Kyle's savings from February to June. The dollar or the numbers over here on the scale mean how many dollars he saved. And you see that you have each month at the bottom, and then the title is Kyle's savings. It says use a straight edge to help you read the graph. That means that you could use your ruler just to be able to read the graph clearly. But I think that we'll be able to look at the bar graphs and be able to figure out which number goes with each month. So since we're not positive which bar is which amount. What I like to always do is I like to go above the bars sometimes and actually write what each bar represents. So go above February, and I want you to put that that is 30. When we're looking at March, I see that it's right above the 45, so that must mean that this is 46. And then when I look at April, it looks like it's at 21, 22, 23. So above April, you need to put 23. And then in May, it's almost on 35, so that must mean that it's on 34. And then June is directly on 40. So get those numbers written above each bar because that's going to make it easier for us to answer these questions down here at the bottom. Okay, so question A says, how much money did Kyle save in May? So we look at May, we wrote the number 34 above that, so he saved $34. Part B says, in which months did Kyle save less than $35? So we're going to look at all of the months that he saved less than $35, and we're going to list those months for Part B. So when you look up here at February, you see that this bar ends at 30, and I know that 30 is less than 35, so I know that February is one of the months that he saved less than 30. March goes all the way up to 46, so that's not going to be a good choice. April goes to $23, and I know that $23 is less than 35. And then May goes to 34, and that's almost to 35, but not exactly. So the last month that we're going to put is May, because as you can see, June goes all the way to 40, and 40 we know is more than 35. So we've got February, April, and May for Part B. Question C says, how much more did Kyle save in June than April? And it says, write a number sentence to show your thinking. So I'm going to let you go ahead and look at the bar graph and look at June and look at April. And it says, how much more did he save in June than in April? So answer that question and make sure you put a number sentence to show your thinking and how you solved it. When you're ready to check it, you can push play. Okay, so your number sentence should have showed 40 because that's how much money he saved in June, and then minus 23 because that's how much money he saved in April. And when you subtracted those, it was equal to 17. So you should have put that he saved $17 more in June than he did in April. Okay, so part D says the money Kyle saved in blank was half of the money he saved in blank. So you're looking for two numbers, and one of the numbers is going to be half of the other number. And if you don't know for sure by looking just at the numbers, take a look at the bars. Look at the bars and see if there is a bar that may be half of the size of another bar. Because when I look at 30 and I look at 46, I think 30 would probably need to be a little bit shorter to be about half of the size of 46. So when I look at this bar for $46 and I look at this bar for $23, it looks that like maybe if I put another one of these bars on top of this one, that it would probably go up there to 46. So we're not for sure if we're talking about March and April here. So we need to see if we can add 23 together 2 times. And if we add 23 together 2 times, and it gives us 46, then we know that 23 is half of 46. So let's just try that out here on the side really fast. 23 plus 23. I know that in the ones place I have 3 and 3, and I know that 3 and 3 is equal to 6, and I know in the tens place I have 20 and 20, and I know that 20 and 20 make 40, so that would give me 46. So that tells me right there that if I had 2 of these bars for April, that it would make it all the way up there to 46. So the money Kyle saved in March, not March, April, the money Kyle saved in April was half of the money he saved in March. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to number 3. We're going to fill in this table based on everything that you see in the graph. This one's really easy. All you have to do is put the months at the top and then put how much money he saved for each particular month. So I'm going to let you get that put on your paper, and I want you to press play whenever you're ready to check it. Okay, so your chart should look just like mine. You got February, March, April, May, and June. You have $30 for February, $46 for March, $23 for April, $34 for May, and $40 for June. Okay, there is another page to the problem set. We've got a horizontal bar graph this time. You can see that the bars are going horizontally and not going up and down. And it says up here that this bar graph shows the number of minutes Charlotte read from Monday through Friday. So we've got the days of the week over here, and these numbers down at the bottom on this scale is going to be the number of minutes that she read. This is skip counting by tens, so you know that if you're directly in between 10 and 20, that you've got 15. If you're in between 20 and 30, you've got 25. So you can kind of skip count by fives in the middle of each number on the scale. And then there's a number line that we're going to be doing something with that's really easy once we've taken a look at the bar graph and answered some questions. So, well, actually, number 4 is actually going to be dealing with the number line that you see down here at the bottom. It says use the graph lines as a ruler to draw in the intervals on the number line shown above. So all it's saying is this right here, this line, if you were to take it all the way down, then you'll put this as 0. The next line would be 10, and then this one directly below it would be 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. So you're just taking the lines that are on the graph, and it's like you're drawing them straight down here on this number line. And then you need to label that. So this one was 0, and then 10, and then keep labeling the numbers on this number line until you get up to 70. And then we're going to look at what it's asking us to do next. So it says, then plot and label a point for each day on the number line. So we're going to have to look at the bar graph to see what Monday was, and Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday, and we're going to plot a point. So it's kind of like what we did with fractions, but we're just doing it with a bar graph. So Monday, whenever we're looking at it, we follow the bar graph horizontally, and it goes all the way to 50. So I'm going to put a dot right here, and I'm actually going to draw a line out, and I'm going to put that this was Monday. And you need to do the same thing on your paper. And then we're going to look and see what Tuesday was. And I see that this bar graph for Tuesday also goes all the way to 50. So I'm going to leave the same dot, and underneath where I wrote Monday, I'm just going to put Tuesday. So I know that both of those dots represent how many minutes she read Monday and Tuesday. So I want you to go ahead and look at Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and plot your points for those days, and then draw a line out kind of like I did and label what day goes with what point. And whenever you're ready to move on, you can push play. So we had Wednesday was at 55 minutes, so it was right there in between 50 and 60. Thursday was also 50 minutes, so we just put it with our Monday and Tuesday. And then Friday she read for 25 minutes, so it was in between 20 and 30. So we did what number 4 was asking, and now number 5 says use the graph or the number line to answer the following questions. So it says, on which days did Charlotte read for the same number of minutes? And I think that this number line helps us see that easier because we've got the same point and we've got all 3 days going with that same point. And then it said, how many minutes did Charlotte read on those days? So she read the same number of minutes on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. On those days, she read for 50 minutes. Make sure you have this written correctly for part A on number 5. And then part B says, how many more minutes did Charlotte read on Wednesday than she did on Friday? So whenever I look at the number line, I see that she read for 55 minutes on Wednesday, and then on Friday she read for 25 minutes. So showing your thinking, you're giving me the equation that you use, which is 55 minus 25, and that's going to give you a certain amount of minutes, or how many more minutes she read on Friday. And then you need to answer that in a complete sentence. So when you have part B done, I want you to push play so you can check your answer. So I know whenever I subtract 55 minutes from 25 minutes, I get 30 minutes. So that means that she read 30 more minutes on Wednesday than she did on Friday. So now we're going to be ready to move to the exit ticket. This is going to be kind of just like what we just did, because you're going to have to use that number line and plot a point, and then you are going to write a number sentence to show the question that they're asking for part B on your exit ticket. So when you have that done, make sure you bring that to me.